The overdiagnosis of attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, in children is one of the most unsettling examples of how the pharmaceutical industry, in concert with a broader cultural shift toward medicalizing behavior, turned childhood restlessness into a chronic, medicatable disorder. While ADHD is a legitimate condition that can cause serious functional impairments in some children, its rapid and expansive redefinition over the past 3 decades has raised deep concerns about whether normal developmental behaviors, such as inattention, impulsiveness, and high energy, have been pathologized for profit. Beginning in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s, diagnoses of ADHD soared across Western countries, particularly in the United States. At the same time, prescriptions for stimulant medications like Ritalin, Adderall, amphetamine salts, and Vyvanse, lisdexamfetamine, exploded. These drugs, classified as Schedule II controlled substances due to their high potential for abuse and dependence, became some of the top-selling psychiatric medications in the world. Pharmaceutical companies raked in billions in annual revenue, while the number of children labeled with a chronic psychiatric condition grew exponentially. What's most disturbing is how thin the line became between genuine disorder and ordinary childhood behavior. In a fast-paced, test-driven educational system where children are expected to sit still for hours, perform at high academic levels, and conform to rigid behavioral expectations, it's hardly surprising that more active, creative, or developmentally immature children began to be seen as problems in need of correction. Rather than adapting school environments to better accommodate childhood variability, the system increasingly turned to diagnosis and medication as the first response. The incentives to diagnose are everywhere. Parents, under pressure from schools or desperate to help their children succeed, are often told that a diagnosis will grant access to special educational accommodations or even better grades through improved concentration. Teachers may feel unequipped to handle a disruptive child and quietly advocate for testing. Doctors, many of whom rely on short consultations and subjective questionnaires, may err on the side of diagnosis simply to offer some immediate intervention. And pharmaceutical companies, for their part, have promoted ADHD awareness through direct-to-physician marketing, educational programs, and even lobbying efforts to relax diagnostic criteria. This system is deeply flawed. The diagnosis of ADHD is largely based on behavioral observations, which are inherently subjective and culturally shaped. A child who seems hyperactive in a suburban American classroom might not stand out at all in a different cultural or educational context. Furthermore, the criteria for ADHD have broadened over time, making it easier to apply the label to a wide swath of children who may simply be bored, understimulated, emotionally reactive, or younger than their peers. The medications themselves are not benign. While stimulants can be effective for some individuals, especially those with moderate to severe ADHD, they come with real risks: insomnia, appetite suppression, elevated heart rate, anxiety, mood swings, and in some cases, addiction or long-term psychological consequences. Some children report feeling numb or not themselves on these drugs. Others may internalize the idea that their normal personality traits, like curiosity, spontaneity, or high energy, are signs of pathology that must be chemically suppressed. Perhaps most troubling is the long-term cultural shift this trend has produced. Childhood is increasingly viewed through a clinical lens, with behavioral difference seen not as diversity, but as dysfunction. Instead of asking how we might better support varied learning styles, emotional needs, or neurological development, we've defaulted to quick-fix pharmacology. We've medicalized the challenge of parenting, teaching, and simply growing up. The ADHD overdiagnosis story is not about fraudulent science. It's about blurred boundaries, misapplied medicine, and the insidious logic of a system that rewards diagnosis and medication over individualized care and structural reform. It's a story of how drug companies saw a lucrative market in children and reshaped a clinical category to meet it. Adderall, Vyvanse, and other stimulants remain enormously profitable. Their widespread use in children and increasingly in adults reflects not just the triumph of a treatment, but the triumph of a mindset that human difference is something to be managed pharmaceutically, even when the evidence is ambiguous and the cost is high. In the end, the cost is not just financial or medical, it's generational. We risk raising children who grow up believing that their minds are broken unless medicated, and that their natural behavior is intolerable unless it conforms. That belief, more than any symptom, may be the true disorder we've created.